Swordhaven, Iron Conspiracy is basically ATOM RPG meets Baldur's Gate 1, but completely stripped of all the flashy wizardry. You step into the barely explored continent of Nova Draconia as a lonely adventurer carrying a peculiar artifact given to you by a dying man on your voyage, kicking off a massive isometric journey. AtomTeam built this, and if you've played their previous post-apocalyptic games, you know exactly how punishing their underlying math gets. But here, they traded the radiation and assault rifles for an alternate history medieval world where magic is strictly outlawed by the ruling class. You won't be casting fiery ice dragon breath spells or summoning elemental familiars here. You rely entirely on cold steel, wooden arrows, and passing brutal dialogue checks. It attempts to capture that classic Infinity Engine vibe, throwing you into a massive nonlinear map filled with hundreds of named NPCs handing out unique, multi-step quests. Your entire gameplay loop revolves around the hybrid combat engine that lets you seamlessly swap between real-time with pause and strict turn-based tactical fighting at the push of a button. You build your main character through an insanely deep creation system, distributing attribute points and picking starting backgrounds before recruiting a party of mercenaries to survive the wilds. Because you can't just blast your way out of ambushes with a heavy machine gun like you could in the older games, you have to actually learn the intricacies of melee spacing and bow ranges. You pause the game, issue precise movement orders to your frontline fighters, and let your archers pick off high-value targets from the backline. If an encounter gets too chaotic or the enemy surrounds you, you hit the toggle and force the game into a traditional turn-based grid so you can micromanage every single action point. Honestly, I found that the combat skills take so much trial and error to understand that you'll probably play for 5 hours, realize your build is completely useless, and start a brand new save file just to reallocate your stats correctly. Look, YouTube is full of 20-minute rambling reviews. If you appreciate short, honest ones like this, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps. Alright, let's keep going. Progression demands that you hyper-specialize your party members because the low magic rule set completely removes the safety net of healing spells and massive area of effect nukes. You equip your squad with basic longswords, heavy shields, and longbows, relying heavily on physical damage types, weapon reach, and armor penetration values to chip away at enemy health pools. Quests are completely non-linear, meaning you constantly stumble into high-level encounters that will instantly wipe your party if you wander down the wrong forest path. The economy and your leveling speed tie directly into how you handle the hundreds of NPCs scattered around the hub towns. You solve problems through massive branching dialogue trees, navigating local politics, and making choices that permanently alter the world state and lock you out of certain quest lines. Since you lack magical crowd control abilities, positioning your party before a fight even starts becomes your most important tactical tool. You set up ambushes, pull enemies into narrow choke points, and manage your limited physical healing supplies carefully. Every single side quest feeds you tiny scraps of experience and silver, making completing minor tasks absolutely mandatory if you want to survive the scaling difficulty of the main storyline. The absolute best part of Swordhaven is how unapologetically old school and uncompromising it feels right from the start. AtomTeam clearly loved this specific subgenre, and they built a world that heavily rewards meticulous map exploration and careful reading of your journal entries. Stripping away the standard high fantasy tropes forces you to engage with the gritty mathematical reality of medieval combat. You actually have to care about weapon ranges, engagement lines, and flanking bonuses instead of just dropping a massive fireball on a group of tightly packed goblins. The sheer volume of side quests gives you dozens of distinct ways to tackle problems, whether that involves bribing local guards, intimidating bandit leaders with high-strength stats, or just stabbing your way through an entire enemy camp. It successfully translates the hardcore, consequence-heavy design of their post-apocalyptic titles into a low-fantasy setting, giving you a 36-hour campaign that respects your intelligence and completely refuses to hold your hand with modern quest markers. Now, this game does have massive problems, starting with the fact that the 1.2 release label is basically a complete lie. You reach the late game areas only to find them entirely unfinished, with the developers actively patching in massive chunks of story content and locations that absolutely should have been there at launch. I genuinely hate when developers do this. It's the equivalent of a massive CRPG launching without finishing its third act, and it leaves a horrible taste in your mouth. On top of that, the low magic setting often crosses the line from grounded into incredibly bland territory. The political factions you deal with just aren't interesting enough to carry the narrative gaps, and you rarely encounter any truly intriguing monsters outside of standard bandits and wildlife. Furthermore, the forced reliance on close quarters melee combat exposes some severely clunky pathing mechanics. In their older titles, you could easily ignore bad companion AI by shooting enemies from across the map. But here, you constantly fight the interface just to get your swordsmen into striking distance without them getting stuck on random environmental geometry. For $25, you get a massive, deeply flawed, incredibly ambitious isometric RPG that honestly desperately needs another full year in the oven to cook. If you grew up playing classic titles like Icewind Dale and absolutely love wrestling with complex character sheets and punishing tactical combat, you'll easily extract 40 hours of solid entertainment out of this package. If you expect a highly polished, feature-complete narrative experience right out of the gate, you need to keep your money in your wallet until they actually finish developing and patching the late-game areas. If this helped, drop a like and subscribe. See you in the next one.